Okay.
I didn't get anything on my email today.
I'll update you twice this week.
Good evening, everyone. It is 6 p.m. and I'd like to welcome you to the April 18th meeting of the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation. I'd like to note that we have a full quorum. We are only missing Mr. Angelo. Richard, do we have any public comments?
I did not have any turned in nor emailed.
Okay, then I'll move on to item number 1, minutes of the regular meeting of March 21st, 2022. Thank you, Ryan, for putting those together. They look wonderful. Does anyone have any comments, addendums, changes, applause? Of course there's applause. Anyone? If there are none, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
I make a motion we approve the minutes. Item number 1 of the March 21st, 2022 MEDC meeting.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve the March 21st, 2022 minutes of the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of the regular meeting of March 21st, 2022 say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously and we will approve the minutes of the regular meeting of March 21st, 2022. Item number 2, MEDC financial report for March. Carol?
Yes, ma'am. On the first page of the report, the sales tax transfer was the $69,648.27, down from last time, of course, but we expected that again. On the third page, with Anthony's new report, I'm having a hard time finding what I need. But on the third page is a comparison of our budget, and we are 6 months into the budget. And as Anthony and I could figure it out, we are doing very well so far. Rebecca, did you have any comments on the 6 months?
No, it looks like we're running well ahead of our revenues.
I'm going to meet with Anthony this next week and get a little bit better detail on
Okay.
the budget, but according to page 3 of our report, there's nothing that I was concerned about.
Right. I'd say the only interesting thing is just for the quality of life category, we're running well ahead of half of our year. But that's not really a surprise given that most events are much more pleasurable held when it's not blazing hot outside. So
Yes.
since our fiscal year ends September 30th, that's not a huge shocker that we get most of that done before summer.
And I did not see anything else in the report that needed to be discussed or anything. So if there's no questions.
Okay. Any questions for Carol that she didn't, anything she didn't highlight? Hearing none, would anyone like to make a motion?
Make a motion we approve the financial report March 2022.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve the MEDC financial report for March 2022. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the MEDC financial report for March 2022 say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously and we will approve the MEDC financial report for March 2022. Item number 3, discuss and consider regarding participation in sponsorship application to Texas Historical Commission for historic signage for the Chilton Dean House on College Street. Richard?
Okay, the Chilton Dean House on College Street, Montgomery, owned locally by Ryan and Kaylee Lundeen, qualifies for a state historical marker. As part of the application process, the Montgomery County Historical Commission will take up the question of their approval on May 2nd, 2022, which is just ahead of the May 16th filing deadline with the state. Their commission marker committee has already approved the item ahead of the May 2nd meeting there. The questions for the MEDC to answer is whether to participate as a sponsor of the application, and also to fund the $100 application fee, and/or fund the cost of the historic marker, which would be around $2,000. The MEDC has budgeted $5,000 to the category of historical signage, and there's an attached draft application summary, and that was furnished to me by the Montgomery County Historical Society.
We specifically had these signs in our mind when we set this budget item, feeling that they're an important part for preservation of the buildings themselves, and then B, for tourism, both of which add money to our economy. So I think it's wonderful. I think, we should start by sponsoring the application, and then if it's approved, sponsoring the sign. That would be my recommendation. I don't know if anyone else has any
Do
other.
you know how many other homes in the city do not have a marker and qualify? Or they just don't qualify? Do we know that?
So when we did the map for, unless Ryan, you have an exact number in your head?
I don't have an exact number, and it's really going to be up to the State Historic Commission to decide the final decision on whether something applies or
And that
not.
house had a marker on it at one time. Did
So-
it get gone?
So
Somebody stole it?
this house is registered, and it has a medallion as a registered historic landmark for state of Texas. It doesn't have the subject marker, so it's the only thing that's being applied for. It's just the subject marker that describes why it is a
Right.
historic structure.
So that's like the
But it-
big rectangular. with the
Right,
little-
it's out in the yard.
Yeah.
It had one at one time.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. I've looked into all the paperwork, and all I saw was an
Somebody-
application for a medallion, so.
Somebody must have gotten it, unless I'm confused on medallion versus,
The medallion is just a thing
Is
that's
the-
by our door.
Yes.
It's right there. It's just a
Right.
star that says historic landmark or something
Yeah.
like that. But the subject marker that has a description of what the house is, that
Mm-hmm.
is what we're applying for. So I don't think we'll have
Long
any issue
time ago.
because it's been registered.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like, when we did the map for the chamber, what did we say there were? Did we put in 35 different locations?
I've counted potentially up to 30 structures. Some of those would be state, but also the Montgomery County Historic Commission, which is like a chapter of the Texas Historic Commission. They have their own markers for things that don't qualify for state markers. They have their own markers that they would also, for roughly the same cost. They're blue. I think it's on,
Oh, it's on the
Adding.
adding,
yeah.
yeah.
And so I think,
That's ugly.
yeah, so some of the, not all 30 will,
Do not.
qualify for the state, but they could potentially qualify for the county.
And it
historic
costs $2,000 also?
It's roughly the same. I think they use the same foundry to produce the signs.
Cast, I guess it's made out of some kind of cast, it's what,
Mm-hmm.
2 foot by 3 foot or whatever.
Yeah, there's two different sizes. I think we're going for the smaller one on this. The ones that you typically see are the smaller sign.
I think it has to be aluminum because it weathers reasonably well.
So
And again, I'd like to see all of the buildings get one.
But-
One of
The people that own the building has to
they
do it?
or
So that's why we only have $5,000 in the
I think
budget.
we only did it because the process is very labor intensive
And you have deadlines,
yes,
of course.
And Ryan felt that might be 1 or 2 a year were really the
I've-
likelihood of achievement.
there's several, like I think the Oaks, the antique store, I don't think they have a marker. That could be one that would very easily have a marker. There's another one on College Street, and Matilda something.
The Alfred and Matilda Morris House,
Yes.
Smith's K.
Piles.
Powell.
Yeah.
I see that as a high potential. So there's already a few that I think would be next in line. It's just who's going to do the research
Right.
and finding those people with the time to do it. I know I always get kind of volunteered, but I don't have necessarily the greatest amount of time to do that. So I've presented it to the society and to the Historic Commission of like, do y'all have people who can do research on these? Because you have to write it up and have bibliography for it, and they have to be, good sources, stuff like that. So it does take a little bit of research and legwork to actually get the application through. It's just finding the volunteers to do that. So that's why we capped it at 5,000 for 1 to 2 markers a year.
Okay.
So
And again, if we're kind of at the end of or midway through anyway, our budget cycle, it doesn't seem like we're going to run out of money yet. But I mean, I'd love to see, on Caroline Street, I think probably the Baptist parsonage would be a surprise, but not unwarranted inclusion. And, we had that building that was on Caroline that got moved out of town, and that would be another thing that this would preserve. I think it'd be harder to, move some of these buildings away if they had the markers to, again, preserve our heritage.
The Bell House behind me, I don't think they have a marker, but it's built by the same Shelton guy who built all the other historic houses, so it's got some significance.
Yeah, the Waters would have on Houston Street,
Yeah.
possibly, maybe not, they might not be old enough.
Might not,
Um,
but it's been there a long time.
So, and the Historic Commission, the State Historic Commission changes they pick a special category each year that they want to emphasize. And so sometimes it just depends year by year, I think, on whether they're going to approve or not approve a subject marker or a historical marker. So it's hard to know exactly which ones would qualify and which ones would not. We can always get advice from the County Historic Commission on what they think, and Mr. Forster and others, and they can kind of help guide us on what we think this would be a county marker or this would be a state marker. And it requires their approval first anyway before it can go up to the state. They need to approve the application. So,
So Ryan, I don't think you'd be able to vote on this item.
no, I'll abstain. I don't know if you need to make that public or not, but I'll be abstaining.
Yes,
So.
I would prefer to just say that up front.
Yeah, very much.
So, does anyone else have any thoughts on this item? Ryan, when do you know whether you're approved or not?
I don't know. Did Larry tell you at all? I don't.
He didn't tell me when they would be hearing about a decision. I think it was.
I want to say it was like 6 months that they take to review.
Okay.
So the county commission will approve or suggest revisions on May 2nd. I've already got subcommittee approval on it, so they should approve it the May 2nd. Then it goes to the state, and I think it takes them several months, like 6 months or so to
It's
look
May
at.
16th, which is the state deadline
Yeah.
for receiving this application, but it was not clear from my conversation with Larry or, and I didn't see the paperwork, what their processing decision deadline would be.
Okay, and I'm looking at here, so the marker fee is due September 16th, so that would be within this budget cycle as well, so that's not complicated. I was wondering if we approve it now, then depending on when they ask for the money, if that gets into a nightmare of, accrual versus cash accounting issues, but not in this case. So,
Well, I'll make the motion, we approve item 3, including a $2,000 cost of a historic marker plus the $100 application fee for the property owned by Ryan and Kaylee Londine.
Second.
it has been moved and seconded to approve the historical marker for the Chilton Dean House on College Street owned by Ryan and Kaylee Lundeen for the amount of $2,000 for the cost of the marker and $100 for the application fee. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any other discussion on this item? All those in favor of approving the $2,000 for the cost of the historical marker and the $100 for the application fee for the historical marker on the Chilton Dean House, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously with Mr. Lundeen abstaining, so it is 5-0 unanimously, but still unanimous. And we will approve cost of $2,100 towards the cost of the historical marker for the Chilton Dean House. Item number 4, update MEDC Board of Directors on signage grant policy and wayfinding signage standards. Richard?
Unfortunately, not a lot of progress got made on that this month. I was out sick for 2 weeks and played catch up for another week, and the person who was going to be helping me mostly on that was doing most of my job in my absence. So I didn't want to leave it as an ignored item, so I'm sure I've got a bit more update next month for that. There also was left off the agenda an update on the RFQ, but that's also referenced with the downtown plan in my report, so I will think about that.
Okay.
That actually has progress.
Okay. With the board's permission, then we'll move on to item number 5. Item number 5, City Administrator's Development Report.
Okay, this past month in April, continued a high level of construction and development in the city, both residential and commercially. Residential construction is occurring across the city, both east and west side, with some infill activity. Commercial construction is primarily on the east side of the downtown area. One area specifically that we get a number of calls or questions about on the east side is the shops of Montgomery and that immediate area. People seeing, essentially, first building is basically full at the shops. They've seen, now Panda Express has been open a few months, and they see the new building going in there. They don't have too much specific information on at the moment, but there are some other areas out there that do have information on, with Discount Tire is currently on, which we hope to be final engineering review, which will be across from the shops and down at the corner. That'll allow us to complete that back street over to Kroger to help traffic connect and stay off of 105. And right now, I think you can all agree it's a good time to try to stay off of 105 if you can. Also expressing interest in that area is Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen. So something not quite yet in the city, but something that does get some people's attention. With regards to the FM 149 turn lane, coming at 149 north in turn lane to turn east onto 105, basically the corner, southeast corner or the Berkshire Brothers corner. Work that was expected to be complete, I believe, September of last year, and we're still kind of at a start mid phase there. The latest word on that is it's expected to be done around September this year now. Wish I could get a more specific or better answer at the text stop. If anyone knows a better person, chase for that, but it's not a priority to them. Over in that area, not this past weekend, but the previous one, there was some electric outage in this area. There was a conflict. Due to the high level of winds, there was a conflict between a newly constructed pole that TxDOT had put up and some of the Entergy wiring. Entergy has taken steps to prevent that from recurring, and TxDOT intends to move that pole. And so it should not recur until they get that work done. With regards to TxDOT 105 access, you've been able to see over the last 1 to 2 weeks the barricades that are out and the barrels to help direct traffic. TxDOT does intend to bring some more action out there to help make it more clear where some of those are going.
And I think it highlights the importance of the work that we've started and the engineering of what we want to happen in the city and coordinating with them rather than having them to drive the whole project or what we have, happening to downtown, because this is a nightmare and there's no telling how short their turn lanes are going to be and where they're going to be and that sort of thing. I think, again, investing in the engineering and the drawings and making sure that it works for what we know is actually happening here makes a lot of sense given the chaos that they can unleash.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying, our 149 corridor is too small and too important to run the risk of any kind of chaotic traffic in that limited area.
Right. Well, even bringing because they're bringing their medians through downtown on 105 as well. But some of these, what we're talking about in terms of the upgrades and that kind of thing, I assume that we're going to be able to be involved with some of their earlier planning and identifying where they're planning on doing these things, and hopefully be able to be at the table early in their design plan, so we can, hopefully our engineers will be, part of that process.
So the direction they're going, it looks to me like they're starting about 149 and heading back east, or are they coming west first?
For the TxDOT project?
Yeah.
They're not coming as far as 149 for the median project. If you've seen the work that's out there, they're about as far west as they're supposed to go, which is a couple hundred feet on this side of 2854. Ultimately, that work will extend all the way practically to I-45. So they're going to go all the way down. There's some other areas between here and Conroe where traffic is redirected, but it looks like we're getting a lot of the early work here in Montgomery.
So are we working with them? Yeah, I mean, the basic plan, I mean, are we working with their specs for possibility of landscaping in the middle in our city as opposed to just concrete?
We should.
I mean, there should be some holes left where,
I mean, if you,
There has been some.
Conroe did a little bit of that, you know, and they didn't do a great job of it, but they did a little bit.
Yeah, there has been some initial discussion and we are pursuing that.
I mean,
And there's only going to be, for this element, there's only going to be a small amount that's in the city, but that's still a pretty significant amount. And for anyone coming from the, from the east heading west, that's what they're seeing first.
yeah,
Right.
it'd be nice as a gateway. When you come in, you obviously know that you're now in Montgomery.
yeah, if we're talking about our vision from loop to loop, east to west, you know, that's the first thing you come to. We ought to have some input with TxDOT to say, look, we want to landscape this and soften it,
Or,
not look like a bunch of concrete.
right, put a bunch of conduit.
Yeah, because otherwise they're just going to fill a median in with concrete.
Right, that or put sleeves in so you can go ahead and run your conduit if you are gonna do lighting later on or whatever.
Right. Now would be the time.
Yeah.
All right.
So going back to 149, the northwest corner where the gas station is that planned to be a dedicated right turn lane at some point? Whoever ends up being the owner of that property?
Oh, the ultimate long-term plan is TxDOT desires to put a specific right turn lane there.
Mm-hmm.
The trouble has been with the gas station and relative to the building, and the build lines and having enough room on the property. At different points, we've tried to help facilitate some conversations that, create an alternative location for the trash dumpster they have out there, which there currently would not be some room for. There had been some previous discussion that they were going to tear down and rebuild their building. And neither of those, ended up being able to go anywhere. One, because they didn't take down the building to rebuild it, they stayed with the building they had. The other, the adjoining property owner just didn't want to agree to the dumpster being on the other side of the building and on the neighborhood property furthermost to them. So that's left us in the position of that property owner unwilling to provide the space because they won't have the space for what they need on their property.
Right.
But ultimately, long term, that's the plan.
And so if you bounce to the south on the southeast corner, that property owner, I mean, really doesn't have much to work with. So, I mean, he's already dedicated that right away or somebody
Right.
previous to him.
But with the southeast corner, that's already, that one's in motion. As slow as the motion has been, because it actually, I've worked for the city for 3 years. It predated me.
Yeah,
But that included the city buying a portion of the property
right.
to turn over.
Okay.
And so I don't exactly recall how far back that goes. That's probably started 5 or 6 years ago.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was provided to TxDOT over 2, possibly 3 years ago. And you
Here
see
we
the
are.
progress they've made
Right.
when it's been all in their hands.
Okay.
Right, the city bought the land, or facilitated the transaction and bought the piece to give to TxDOT. I mean, the whole thing was based on the city looking ahead and saying, we need a turn lane, so when that property came up for sale, we bought it
Right.
to make that happen, rather than trying to, it's an attractive corner, so we were pretty sure that once someone built something on it, it was going to be much more
Yeah.
difficult to get a piece of it.
Yeah, just getting back to his point, the TxDOT project that's occurring now, I mean, if we don't stay out in front of it somewhat, they're going to do whatever they want to do.
Right.
And, if we don't provide input, they're just going
I'll make a
to,
point
it'll be too late.
that we work with greater effort on some of those conversations.
It makes sense to go for the design that we talked about for closer to downtown with the flags on the median. And,
Right.
I know that we don't have the space downtown to have a planted median with a boulevard and trees, which would be fabulous, but it's just not feasible. But,
Yeah.
the lighted flags and things like that would be,
Yeah, if you could start it at your gateway with
Right.
trees
Yeah.
and landscaping, not necessarily flags, so to speak, we're probably getting flag overrun, but
Is there really such a thing, Wade?
but definitely from an aesthetic standpoint,
Right.
it looks
But
like.
I'm just not sure that there's enough median and enough height clearance to put, you know, a critical mass of trees to, you know, keep them alive and,
Right.
and make that happen.
Yeah, and I'm just talking about like the east side, back by 2854, that area where they're planning on doing the median anyway.
Right. And I mean, truly, our city limit starts at Pizza Shack, so,
Right.
you know,
Right.
in theory, this should start a little bit earlier, but
Sure.
it no.
If we can, let's do it. Yeah.
No later than 2854,
Right. Agree.
but it might be too late now since they've started.
Sure. Well, it'd be nice to keep that theme, that historical theme that we,
I mean, you,
One way or another, I'm sure there's something that can be done.
I mean, you tell me, concrete versus, you know, landscape. I mean, I don't know that it's too late. I mean, I think we could probably,
Just the bureaucracy of trying to get through text
Right.
dot and get the change order made and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They may not even budge. They may say we have a contract, we're just gonna keep it that way.
or just leave a leave out until we get our
We can
ducks
wait
in
for-
order.
we can wait for them to leave and then we could just quickly get.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Go out the middle of the night with a
Right.
sledgehammer.
Yeah, that's what I mean, just have a leave out there where you can plan to do it later.
Yeah.
Where it's-
That's what they did in Conroe.
Yeah.
They just left it out and the city came back in and did the landscaping themselves.
Yeah. Something like that, there's usually a couple of different ways to attack it.
As long as it's not poured solid concrete, right?
That's what I'm saying, yeah, it's cheaper to leave it out.
And then come back and allow us to, with the fill.
Yep.
All right, another thing I wanted to refer to on this, the downtown improvement plan, of course, a number of the photos. With regards to that, from the action last month, we did complete and publish the RFQ on the McCown area's streetscape elements. So that is posted to the city's website, we published it to the Conroe Courier, as a newspaper of general circulation for the county. We have those requests due back to us here by May 4th, so we can have some time to evaluate those and try to bring a recommendation back here for the May meeting. And then also our subscription to ancestry.com is coming up. It's $22 for 6 months. I plan to just go ahead and renew that unless anyone objects and wants it to be an agenda item next month.
What is the name of it?
Ancestry.com. Well, it's a website that helps track ancestry. We've been able to utilize it to be able to get historical information and photos that have been, been used to.
Who are you trying to find? Wait a minute now.
My family moved here when I was small, so we're not tracking me. But we are using it to try to track some of the older families of Montgomery. In particular, stories or especially photos that we might not otherwise be able to have access to. And I know there's a few specific ones. I think one of the ones that comes to mind is one or more of the old school photos.
One of the photos on my application I pulled from my house, the old picture of the house, I pulled that off of ancestry.com. Someone had found it and tagged it. So you can find stuff for all different types of things, old structures and people and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know just enough about that to be dangerous because I'm not really a user of it myself, but I know I hear a lot of good stories about the things that people can find, especially if you find the right family members.
Yeah.
So that was all I had for my report here. If you have any other questions, otherwise I can move to the engineer's report.
That's fine with me.
Okay. The engineer was planning to be here tonight, but as of about 45 minutes ago, was just getting out of the meeting in Hempstead. So he was gonna. So you have his written report. He made to council last month. He specifically wanted to be here to discuss just updates on the sidewalk items. Right now, the plans are just completed on the sidewalk, and they're working with tying up the easements with the property owners there to move that to the next phase. Okay, any questions about the engineer? Thank you.
Continue on, please.
give you a copy of the report, with on half of what the farmer's market has been, have Hanson's, and they're outgrowing their space there. They want to bring in food trucks and do other things that wouldn't be a good idea at that space. So they've been discussing the property on Clever, that was brought before City Council last week. They had some questions that we'll have to get back to them with. Where I've also been discussing it with the county, because when you have food vendors, there are certain requirements that you have to have toilets for the vendors. They can't have those porta potties, because you don't want them cleaning their hands at the porta potty and then going back and serving food. So that's possible. We don't have any activities out there now, and we have people out there who would take care of it and help keep it up and bring people out to that property and grow paper. They currently are do about 10 vendors. They're hoping to spread up to about 20 or 30 vendors, which would be fantastic every Saturday.
Where's this piece of property off Clifford?
It's just across the street from Fernland.
Oh, okay.
There's
East of the school. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
Behind the
vacant
school
now.
there.
I didn't realize that there was roads cut back.
It's
That's
just a dirt
the old
road, that's all.
draw off lot line.
Is there gonna be a conflict with the heavy trash day?
Question.
We're discussing that we have 4 heavy trash packages there, and they probably could not have the property on those 4 Saturdays. But they'll have classes out there and activities, and it should be a big, big deal. I do all the requirements that a standard festival has to have. They have and insurance policy to cover anything happening out there. They do want to bring a building, a 10 by 10 building for their tents to be housed in, so we're discussing that. And we're looking at a city attorney, and he doesn't see a problem with that. They signed off a waiver. So if you have any questions on the farmer's market, I would be happy to answer them.
And tell us again where the parking is going to be for this?
They, across the street, at Philip Lefebvre's properties, that area, he's given permission to park in that parking lot across the street. They're currently parking a field, and so that will be a big step up for people who don't park in the dirt on the slope. So that's being worked on. The Texas A&M Forestry stopped out here last month and gave out, I want to say 250 trees, little saplings, and people were so excited to get those. They would like to start doing that annually. And people were super excited. We just had 2 weeks to plan it, and so kind of just got stuck on real quick.
Did you tell them if they start bringing money trees, that'll be a big hit here?
I know, but we're working on pulling it to a paper event probably at the park next time. But people were very happy to get free trees to build plants on their properties. I reached out to Charlie Davis, haven't heard back from him. He has an event this Saturday, so he's probably busy. He'll be coming back. I'm hoping next time with some details and check.
I can give you just, just general guidance, talking to folks. Typically when folks offer information, it's on their mind a lot, and they're just not real keen on Charlie Diggs twice in a year. Maybe they tolerate it once, and I think it's just the size overwhelms. Some of business owners downtown, and some of them are just trying to walk their dogs and do their normal things because they're not mud bug people or whatever. But just stick it on your head just for common knowledge.
Well, the spring of event is held at Handsom's. And so that doesn't affect the parking downtown. But they did bring in 10,000 people into town for that one day, which is massive.
Yep.
And that helps our restaurants in town, our gas stations in town, our grocery stores in town.
I think I just must have hit a wave of people who live over there, and they're not going to town, and they don't, but I told them I would express concerns, so.
Yeah.
So I worked parking
That's
that
what
day from
I've heard.
like noon until 6-ish. And most of the cars came up CB Stewart. Very few came from downtown. The street that's just over, like across, like hardly any, I don't think anyone parked at Longview because Jason had a sign, actually I think he had a sign that said $20 parking. And so nobody parked there. Charlie's parking was free. And a lot of people, so I was working with the Scouts and the Lions, and people gave the Scouts a lot of donations when they found out that the parking was free. They were shocked. And they just gave money to the Scouts, which was great. We raised like $5,000 almost in one day. And, we had 2 lots, 2 entrances. People funneled in reasonably quickly. There were only a couple times where we were actually backed up trying to get people into the lots. And like I said, they mostly came up CB Stewart, which wouldn't have impacted the residential. And I didn't see anyone trying to get back into, is it Racetrack that curls all the way back up again? To Klepper. I didn't see anyone going down there. There were a couple people that went down and turned around, and that was it. I mean, it was not a heavily impacted. Nobody parked at Fernland. Nobody parked in Phillips parking lot. It was not. There was room for everyone in the 2 lots that they had.
The fall festival they would like to have downtown again, which we're going to have a discussion about that, because if you sell alcohol, you do have to fence off the entire area. And so fencing off the entire downtown is tricky.
Yeah, that was especially a case of a lady who owns a business whose husband is a fire marshal. And she felt like they could not get safety out, and her husband pointed that out, so.
Well, we do speak to the fire chief every time we have an event, and they tell us what we can and cannot do. And so I have the chief's input on it. But fencing off the entire downtown is not ideal.
But we don't do it very often.
No, just for fall festival, you don't have to fence it off if you're just selling beer or wine. But alcohol, you have to fence it off. And so that's where the stickiness.
Now, when they had the last festival, it seemed, they were selling alcohol, I guess, mainly up there by the stage, is that what it was? Or, so that area was fenced off, or, because I don't remember downtown being fenced off, I guess.
Fall
Yeah.
Fest,
It was.
it was fenced, it was not completely as fenced as of it. Thank you, Chip. But we're going to start discussing that in July
Yeah.
and figure out how we can do it safely and get
Could they just,
businesses access that have to have access, but we have to close it off.
Right. Well,
could they just do it without liquor? I mean, just do beer and wine?
Well,
That seems like the easiest route and a lot cheaper.
that or just have the alcohol part by the community center, so you don't have to have fences all the way
Right.
down.
yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, with the money we're getting ready to spend on McGowan to create a festival atmosphere, we could probably figure it out, because that's gonna happen.
Yep.
And the merchants better get used to it, I guess. That's gonna help them.
And they've always had big festivals downtown.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's just finding a balance where the business who want to participate can, and those that don't want to aren't heavily impacted.
Right.
But
I thought last year it went pretty well.
Oh, I do
For a
too. I mean,
first-
all
For a
the
first
shops
event, yeah.
full of
we
people.
have a few little tweaks that have to.
You're gonna always have somebody that complains,
I know.
regardless, but,
And that was our first time having Charlie downtown.
right.
And we've done 2 big events downtown, and so we're finding certain solutions to problems for PDs. But they have to be in the correct spot, not shut down at the end why you can't see it, the stuff going on.
Yeah.
So we're coming up with some procedures that people may not like, but PD, they have to be in certain places for safety, and that
Yeah.
comes first.
That does come first.
And so, basically, if chief says they have to have something, they have to have it.
What is consistently in that whole revitalization idea is, number one, we have to have business cooperate with one another.
Yes.
And number two, which is really 2 and 3, safety parking is an issue. And so that's what we gotta have.
We talked about it before. I mean, I think that, the days of being able to park within 20 feet of a big event are over. Rolling up 15 minutes before something starts is over, unfortunately, for people who've grown to love that or had loved that about Montgomery. Everyone's discovered, not everyone, we could still do better, but a lot of people have discovered Montgomery, and, we all have to make adjustments to that. And I think, this should probably come up on the agenda at some point, but, we have to be part of the solution part of the solution is, transportation from an outlet, satellite parking to the center through a shuttle. And I think that, the EDC has to be part of that if we want to still have these big events. Because there's still going to be more building on, like, the lots that we used for mud bugs, I doubt will be around in 2 to 3 years. So if those are gone, that leaves, we start losing, for the Fall Fest, Wine Fest, those, and Christmas, those we need more. Those events can't happen without satellite parking once those outside lots are gone.
And the numbers are just growing too much, as you're saying. I mean, Montgomery is a city of about 2,000 residents. The Christmas parade had 2,000 people almost in the parade,
Right.
not counting a couple thousand people that would watch the parade.
Right.
It's the equivalent of just busing in the city of Montgomery to perform the parade.
Except for they didn't come in in buses, they were
Exactly.
smart cars, they came in a
Yeah.
pickup truck with a 16-foot trailer on it, kind of thing. So it's a lot of,
Plus 1,000 individual cars that came, and that all, added. So, but you're right. The days of 100 people coming to an event are done.
right, so the events are more successful, but we have to adjust.
Yeah, and being a city of 2,000 people with the kind of growth that we're seeing out here, we're probably 5 years away from being a city of 5,000 people. And So it's just greater numbers of people that are here for the events and will come to the events. So you're right, there's going to have to be a medium to long-term solution to being able to move people around.
Right, and I think we know what the solution is. We just have to install it and train ourselves to make it part of every event. We have to train people who have always come to events and rolled up to, you know, go to the satellite locations and enjoy the shuttle. Whereas I don't think, you know, people aren't going to enjoy the shuttle. It's just going to have to be part of an event in a small location like this. And we're just gonna have to make it part, either we'll have to make it enjoyable or make people want to do it anyway, because there is no parking.
The bottom has the permits that have been put out. We've had a lot of vendor permits. I've spent a lot of time putting out vendor permits. The county's coming in on Thursday to help train me, because they don't train people, cities, on what they come and check for. And since we follow the county guidelines, we kind of should know what they look for to tell our vendors, to tell our event organizers, because nobody has any idea. So county's coming in for a little training session so we can get staff educated on what the county expects these vendors to do. The county doesn't have people to come out every day and check vendor setups and how they're selling their products, kind of up to cities to kind of make sure the vendors are doing it correctly. So getting some training would be very helpful for staff. And my goal is to get a process going and hand it off to city staff and say, here, go get them. But there hasn't been a process before, so trying to get that straightened out and hand it off.
To go get them, what do you mean by that?
Well, vendors stop in and call in, they don't know what they have to turn in for a permit, what kind of permit do I need?
Okay.
And that takes a lot of just time, but staff has to know what to tell these people and direct them, but staff doesn't know because the county has never trained staff.
Okay.
And so getting this straightened out in a formal process of how we do it, I can then hand it over to city staff to handle those food permits and freeing me up to start other things.
So
Who
create-
handles them now? The food vendor permits? Okay.
Amy has helped fill the gap when Susan left,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, Nikki will be taking that over, but also, you know, with the county coming in to help give us some of the specifics that we were, that we've never been able to get out of them before in terms of what they're looking for, so we can follow along with that. Then we can have more of our front office staff as
And-
well educated. in that.
And we have a problem with food vendors?
We're just trying to make sure that we're properly enforcing the regulations.
And they have a written guideline that makes it easy for them to
Well,
apply
they-
for a permit if they can comply.
Well, there's permits that the city issues, but they also have to have a permit from the county before they get
Right,
it
but
from the
if
city.
there's a
Only
guideline that a new
certain
vendor
kinds.
came in would say, okay, A, B, C, I mean, this is what we need.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's necessary.
Yeah, that's what I've been creating just a very simple form saying, county says if you're this type of vendor, you have to turn in this. If you're this one, you have this permit or this permit, depending on what you do. Because these vendors don't have any idea.
Yeah.
And when they call the county, they get different answers? Or they don't get anyone to tell them what's going on. They used to.
County sends them to the website, which is nutty.
Okay.
It's not,
Because in the past, we had a contact person
yeah.
at the county that we could tell them to go
For
to.
years. And so
Okay.
I've got that set up now, and they'll be trained by county on what to tell our people, and it'll be clearer, and we'll have more information. The vendors will have more information, and it should just make it much simpler, is my goal.
Yeah. Up until this contact that you connected with, it's like the previous contacts that both myself and Dave McCorkey have been trying to work with there, best I can say about it is we received, very vague answers and very little specific guidance.
I'd put it in writing. I mean, this is it. This is what you
So-
comply with. Everybody's on the
so-
same page.
Yeah, so we're happy that we're getting more specific information from someone who is out and about with people and responsible.
That would have, once we get this perfected, so to speak, would have helped, because when I went to the vendors and I listened in to their concerns on Thursday, it was a matter of, well, when we were setting up, they told us all was well. And then an hour later, it's something else. But y'all's corresponded already, and you're getting them to go to the website. It's training for us, but it's also training for repeats. But about half the ones I talked to, this was their first time.
Yeah.
So we are, that's good, because you're saying getting people here, right? We just need to get it all ironed out. And like anything else, it is education, but it's also being consistent with somebody there who knows what they're saying and can very clearly communicate to these folks when they come in. And that's not always easy to do, but it's got to be somebody on staff assigned to do that.
Yeah, and you're right, there's going to be growth pains along the way, but when we get to the end product, it will be so much better.
Yes.
Because do-overs cost money for everybody.
All right,
Powerful reports.
all right. Then we'll move on to executive session. The MEDC Board of Directors reserves the right to discuss any of the items listed specifically under this heading or any other items listed above in executive closed session as permitted by law, including if they meet the qualifications in sections 551.071, consultation with attorney, 551.072, deliberation regarding real property, 551.073, deliberation regarding gifts, 551.074, personnel matters, 551.076, deliberation regarding security devices, and 551.087, deliberation regarding economic development negotiations of Chapter 551 of the Government Code of the State of Texas. We will now adjourn into closed executive session to discuss deliberations regarding real property under Section 551.072. We are adjourning at 6:53. session.
But 7.
Oh, sorry, 7:35. What did I say?
9.
9.
Well,
Ooh, girl, moving on, aren't you?
I'm glad it's not.
I swear I haven't started my day drinking yet.
Ooh.
Anyway, so we are taking no action from our executive session. Would anyone like to add anything for board inquiry? Any items for next meeting? Any questions that weren't addressed this time?
I have one question. I saw on the agenda where we had special project managers report,
Yes.
and then on the report, event coordinator report. So can I get a clarification on what this person is classified today?
Well, today, a special project manager. The reasoning for that, or how you saw that, was this month's reporters report on the previous month, and Amy's first day in that position was at the start of this month. So her position last month was as events coordinator. And so, but I listed on the agenda by her current title.
So she did get the job.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, it was announced at the
sorry.
last meeting.
I'm sorry?
It was announced at the last meeting, which I believe you were.
Oh, it was not in the minutes, because Byron and I both
Yeah, we
questioned
were missing that
Got it.
from the minutes.
that it wasn't in the minutes that anybody had been interviewed
Was it
and
last meeting or the meeting before
gotten the
that?
job.
I think it was at the last meeting that it was announced.
Well, to give
Okay.
you some more information on that, just for clarity, there were, I believe, I'm just pulling from memory, I believe 6 applications received, 3 people were interviewed, and ultimately, Ms. Brown was judged to be the best fit for this position.
Okay, that's great. I just needed
No,
clarification.
and I apologize,
I
it
was
was not made clear, but
Yeah.
Sorry.
I definitely like an update on the discussion that we had somewhere in the early parts about the TxDOT situation, whether we would be able to make some adjustments in their plans to improve the aesthetics of their median project that they're doing right now. If that's something that we need to participate in financially in order to make that happen.
And is that the engineers that would do that, or
I don't know, probably
Mr.
staff. But
city
I feel
administrator
like
would do
Gunda
that?
might be a better, or might be a very good choice if we could rope them in somehow and get some footwork out of them, because I know they've got some really good contacts at TxDOT.
Who's that?
Gunda, they did our downtown design plan.
Okay. Yeah.
all right. And another reason I was planning to talk to Kyle tomorrow, so
Okay.
I'll bounce that off of him. And then that
Yeah.
included.
I'm like what you mentioned. I mean, might as well go to the city limits if you're going to go to 2854. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that just let the gateway extend
Right.
further out.
Right.
I mean, I think it's worth doing early because it'll cost a lot more
Oh,
to dig something up and do it later.
It'll never happen if you don't do it. Yeah.
right.
Agreed.
And I was going to ask about 2 pieces of property in town, and I forgot which ones.
Oh, Richard, you were going to ask him about the roundabout, by the way.
Yeah, that's why I called.
Okay.
The,
And Dave is familiar with, or has crossed paths with property owners, and that's an idea.
Okay, great.
I'll do that. No, sorry.
the car place, what was it called? Down on the corner of Lone Star Parkway and 149?
Oh, the antique car place?
Yes. It's
Old
sold.
Ironworks?
It's sold, that building and everything. Mr. Gullo bought it.
Oh,
Mr.
Okay, Tony.
Uh-huh. Supposedly,
Tony's
he's
got a lot of toys.
putting in
Yeah.
some antique cars and making it a museum with
Oh,
the
wow.
ice cream shop inside.
His museum at his house is wonderful.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, he's-
I'm excited.
My wife
if
was
only
raised
you had
right
a social
next
media
door.
manager who could do some tourism-related stuff.
And one other piece of property.
Do you think of Berkeley's across from Jim's?
Oh, yes, I see it every day and then I forget.
So who
I drive
purchased
by
that
there.
property?
I don't know.
Across from Jim's?
across from Jim's.
Right across.
Richard, do you know who
Good for
bought the
sale
property
forever.
across from Jim's, where the roundabout's gonna be?
I don't have the name, I know. I
And
heard-
it's
I-
floods
I heard
and-
from Dave in conversation, Dave broke it down, because he has had some very preliminary conversation with them.
They're
about the
putting in a
property.
food truck park.
That is what they told him. However, that property is partly in the historic district, partly out of the historic district. It's partly zoned residential, partly not zoned residential. So there are some issues with that.
And they're from Philadelphia.
I just know that they're from out from the
And-
area. so.
Are they aware of the Deacon Baldy's on the west side of town?
That I don't know.
I don't know
How many
either.
food truck parks are we gonna end up having?
I wondered.
Well, they're on 1480, they moved.
No, they're the same operator.
It's the same-
in
same
the one across
person.
from the church,
Yeah.
at the old
Lone
Heritage
Star.
House.
Yeah, the old Heritage House.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
They just had a lot of success on
yeah, just a different name.
Wait,
Same operator.
where are they doing that? On,
On 149 at the. old
across the corners?
Uh-huh.
Interesting.
Yeah, so.
Yep,
that's
they're
where-
telling
what's it-
residents
What's it
there.
called, Crazy Pies or whatever, the pizza?
Dizzy.
Dizzy Pie.
Dizzy Pie.
Dizzy
That's the
Pie.
first truck, and then there's another truck coming in, and they got
They
a few
pulled a
more
crowd on
coming.
1488, I mean, there's a lot of kids, a lot of families.
It's a popular place.
It is,
Has been for years.
yeah, it is, yeah.
Did they open what, five? Like
Probably
years
5,
ago?
6 years ago.
Food truck parks are great for families like us with kids.
It is.
They can go destroy.
Turn them loose.
And then,
The noise doesn't echo.
Right,
just
right.
dissipates. That's
We
what-
love food truck
I
parks.
have the agenda item for next meeting.
Okay, does anyone trust me to tell the time when I call it?
Get you a drink.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so moved.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
We are unanimously adjourned at 7:42.
everybody looked up at that clock.